you want to dig deeper into the story of your family. You want to know who came before you. Sometimes your family doesn't know much about your heritage and there's not much to start with. Well, it just so happens that sometimes even the simple things you do know can make a difference and get you going in the right direction. In this video, we're going to look at ways you can leverage the surnames in your family to find more information. First, I'll explain some basics about surnames. Then I'll show you how to start discovering more about your ancestry by looking up surnames on FamilySearch.org. After that, Kelsey will show you how to look up surnames on Ancestry.com. And finally, for those who want to look a little deeper, Charlotta will introduce us to surname distribution maps. These maps show places within specific countries where a surname was most common. This gives us clues about likely places to find our ancestors. Are you ready? Then let's go. So, you might be wondering why we keep using the term surname. In some cultures, it's simply referred to as the family name or the last name. However, in others, the family name might actually come first, or your name might be a combination of family names. In almost every case, some of the family names do not get passed down. This may include your mother's maiden name and your grandmother's maiden names. So, if you know your 4 grandparents, there may be 4 surnames you can use to start constructing your family story. If you don't already know all the surnames for your grandparents, ask yourself if there's anyone else who might know. Maybe you can send that person a text or give them a call. And if there are some parents or grandparents that your family doesn't know, just work with what you have. Once you have some surnames in hand, it's time to try some online tools to see what you can discover.
Hey everybody, this is Greg. One of the fastest ways to learn about where your ancestors might be from is to see where other people with the same surnames have lived. Most of the tools for doing this are easy to find through a Google search and are free. Let's try this one. In a web browser, go to FamilySearch.org/surname. You'll notice there's room to type in one surname and there's a search button. There's a link below that to search for a specific ancestor, like a grandparent. We'll look at that later. I'm going to enter my surname and then hit search. Let's look at the results. I can see information about the meaning of my last name. That's pretty cool. When I scroll down, I see places where lots of people with that last name have lived. England, that's cool. United States, which is where I live. Germany, I didn't know that. The country information comes from a genealogy app and website by FamilySearch. It's called the family tree. In this case, the word tree is referring to a genealogical database of ancestor relationships. The FamilySearch tree is crowdsourced by millions of users from around the world, and it's free to use. There's a bunch of stuff I can do at this point. I can share this by downloading a copy and sending it in email or text. I can also post it on social media. I can also go back to the top and enter a different surname, perhaps my mother's maiden name, or I can try my grandmother's maiden name. These can give me clues about my heritage. And if I don't know my grandma's maiden name, I can always call or text someone in my family who does. So with just a few surnames, I'm on my way to learning more about my family. This helps me understand my family story.
Hi everyone, my name is Kelsey. I want to show you something on Ancestry.com. By simply typing your last name or surname, you can find information on the family origins of people who share those same last names. First, you go to Ancestry.com/learn/facts. When you get to this page, you just type in your surname. And once you've tried your own last name, you can go back and try your mom's maiden name, or you can try either of your grandmother's maiden names. Let's look at some of the things that we can find. It shows some information about the meaning and history of that surname. It also shows similar surnames. It displays this cool map of where that surname was most common, and you can see how that changed over time. There's some cool information about what people with that surname did for a living. It will also show you which types of historical records include that last name and what you might learn from them. Sometimes it shows information about life expectancy. This gives you a sense of the living conditions that some of your ancestors might have experienced. You can also see some tree profiles for people with this surname. When we talk about a tree profile, what we're referring to is the information that someone has added to an online database of ancestors. I didn't have to know much to see this information, just a surname. Now, if I want to keep going, I have a few options. I can use this search box at the bottom to look up another last name. This is where I'd put in my mother's or grandmother's maiden name. Or, back at the very top of the page, I can start searching through historical records by adding information about one of my ancestors, like a grandparent. Finally, there's an option around the middle of the page where I can try to discover my ancestors in a family tree. This will allow me to add ancestors, one generation at a time, and see what ancestry can find about them. We hope you'll find this to be an easy way to get started. Thanks for watching.
Now that we've seen simple experiences on FamilySearch and Ancestry, we want to show you something a little more powerful, but it's also a little less simple. This part of the video is for those who are ready to take the next step in looking for their homelands. Greg's going to talk to Charlotta for a few minutes, and she's going to introduce some special maps called surname distribution maps. They can show you states, districts, or provinces within countries where a specific surname was most common. But you need to understand this is not a single map for all the surnames around the world. Instead, there are many different websites with many different maps. When you visit some of these websites to use the surname distribution maps, they're probably in a different language. Now, if you're like me, it's easy to feel intimidated when trying to navigate websites in another language. But don't worry, Charlotta is going to show us a cool trick with Google Translate that makes foreign language websites easier to navigate. To make these maps easier to get to, a handy list of them has been added to the FamilySearch Wiki. When we talk to Charlotta, you'll see her access the FamilySearch Wiki. Let me briefly tell you about the ways that you can access it. One way is to type in the URL familysearch.org/wiki. A second way is from the Help Center on FamilySearch, which is accessible by tapping on the question mark icon. The third way is from the search menu. All right, let's hear from Charlotta.
Charlotta, how are you today?
Doing great, Greg. How are you?
Good, doing well. So glad that you could join and that we could talk about this. I wanted to ask you a little bit about what resources might be available for finding your homelands using your surname. What can you show us? What can you tell us?
Well, there's such a thing called surname distribution maps. These are kind of fun to look at. They'll point you, if you have a country where you think your surname is from, you can look up a surname distribution map specifically for that country. And then you can search for your surname or a surname of one of your ancestors. You can see how common it is in that country, as well as what regions of the country it's more common in and less common in. It's kind of fun to look at a little bit and gives you a bit of an idea of where you'll start your research.
Oh, that's great. Well, could you show us?
Yeah, I would love to. Let me just share my screen. So we are on FamilySearch.org. We'll click on the search tab, and then we'll go down to the research wiki at the very bottom. Once we're here in the search box, I'll just type in surname distribution map, hit enter. You can see the second hit is the surname distribution maps. This is a general category where it will give us a list of various countries. If we scroll down, we have several different countries. We have Argentina, Austria, Belgium, etc. And there are various links to different surname distribution maps. So each of these are country specific, For example, I can click on one of these by Germany. I'll click on Namen, and it will take me to this Germany surname distribution map. I use this one quite a lot. This is also helpful if you're wondering how common the spelling of your surname is versus a different spelling, because you'll see spelling wasn't standardized, so you see variants of your surname. So for example, if we type in a very common German surname, Schmidt, you can type that up here, click on search, it will populate this map. You can see Schmidt is extremely common in Germany, which means if you have a surname Schmidt in your ancestry and you meet somebody else with that surname, chances are you're not related because everybody has Schmidt, right?
So the darker the red circle, the more Schmidts there were from that part of Germany. Is that what you're showing us?
Yeah, and if we scroll down a little bit, you can see there's a small legend here where the larger circles are 100 plus hits. The smaller circles are 1 to 5 hits, but we have hits everywhere we look on this map. If we type in a different surname, for example, Rosenbaum, and hit enter, there are much fewer, and you can see some regions where there are more hits and fewer hits. So we have quite a few here over on the west side and in Berlin, and we have some scattered throughout the rest of Germany, but it is more regional in this case. So this is interesting because if you have no idea where you're going to be doing your research, where your ancestry is actually from within the country of Germany, this is giving you a little bit more of an idea. It's kind of fun.
I see what you're saying. So essentially, I'd be looking for the places where it's the name is more prominent, and hoping that maybe I could find some information about my ancestors in that part of that country.
Exactly.
Great.
So if we return to the wiki page, Surname Distribution Maps wiki page, let's also go to one of the French websites. This top one, Geopanterdom. And there are a couple of different reasons I like this one. I'm going to type in my surname, Champenois, and hit enter. And you'll notice that these websites are in different languages. This one is in French, the other one was in German. If you don't speak those languages, that's okay, because when you click on the link that takes you to the Surname Distribution Map website, all you want to do is look for a search bar and type in the surname, because chances are that's where it's going to be, right? So if you don't know where it's a search or anything like that, just hit enter on your keyboard and that will work as well. So here I typed in my surname, and we can see it's showing up a little bit differently from the other surname distribution map. In this case, we have the darker colors, there are more hits. So you can see in these departments, we have several hits up in the north, but in the southern part of France, there's nobody with that surname. So again, this is regionalized. And in this case, you can look over on the right side of the page, and it's actually breaking it up by the departments of France and saying, this is we have the map on the left, but then on the right, they're also showing you written out in order of the most prominent areas or the areas where the surname is most common to least common. So from here, I could say, well, then maybe I want to start learning more about how to research in these locations. For example, where the records are, if they're available online, stuff like that. This is just kind of giving you a starting point and a little bit of interesting information. You could take a snippet of this, share it on social media, and just show people where your family is from.
That's great, Charlotta. One more question. How does it deal with different time periods? Is this just looking across all time periods? Each website's probably a little bit different.
Exactly. Each website is different. In this case, we have this right here, choose the time period. So this website, you can actually select you can see it still ranges, not a specific year, but a range. So I can say, well, more recent is 1966 to 1990. That may not be as useful to me, but maybe I want to look in the late 1800s to the early 1900s. So I can click on that and it will show me more information about that time. Other maps are more recent, not exactly current, most likely. Whereas others, you can select a year range like this or a specific year to look at. It just kind of depends on the map. But even if it's recent and you have ancestors back from the 1800s, it's still going to be similar. It still will give you an idea, especially of, again, how common the surname is or how rare it may be, and also the general regions that the family may have been from.
You know, Charlotta, as I look at this page, I have to tell you, I feel just a little intimidated because the whole page is in French. It's a language that I don't read, that I don't write, that I'm not familiar with, and it's just pretty intimidating.
Yeah, it definitely can be, but you can actually use Google Translate to help you out. If you're viewing the website in the Google Chrome browser, on a PC at least, you can just right-click anywhere on the screen and then select Translate to English. You can see how this will translate. Google Translate, so it's not perfect, but it will help a lot. You can see how this is all of a sudden showing up in English. It's now
That's
the
amazing.
France, right? So again, not perfect, but pretty nice. Choose the period. This is telling you this information is based on birth records. So that's where they got the information from. And these are departments. All of a sudden, this is starting to make a little bit of sense. So you do want to be aware of when you use the translate button, it can't translate images. So if there's anything on here that's a JPEG or anything like that, it can't translate that because it's looking at it as an image rather than as text. But anything that is text will be translated. Something to be aware of as well is, for example, if my name is Champenois, if the surname that I typed in were Fuchs, for example, that's a word in German. If it were translating that, it would translate the name as well. So sometimes you'll get some odd things showing up and you might wonder, why is there a department called North? Well, the department probably is not called North. It was just translated because the word in French is actually the word for North. So some things to be aware of, but it's very helpful. Yes.
Great. That is great. Charlotta, thank you so much. That's great.
Welcome.
To recap, we've learned some basics about surnames. We've looked at simple surname searches on FamilySearch.org and on Ancestry.com. And we've learned about surname distribution maps that you can access from the FamilySearch Wiki. We hope this is helpful as you continue to look for ancestors and piece together your family's story. Please be sure to check out more of these videos about finding ancestors and homelands. Thanks for watching.